Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that, but don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new week of CinemAddicts. This is CinemAddicts episode 288. We are covering movies opening for the week of Friday, April 4th, 2025. The movies we are covering are Wake Up, Parvulos, Children of the Apocalypse, Eric Larue, When Fall is Coming, Hell of a Summer, and Freaky Tales. And yes, again, I'm bringing back Greg Sruzavasti's fake voice because it makes me sound more energetic instead of my normal voice, which is like this. How are you, Eric Holmes? How are you doing right now?
I'm doing great, Greg. And this is my radio voice, my podcast voice. But this is my normal voice when I'm watching movies and reviewing it. It's a really good one. It was a 4.5. Yeah, I really enjoyed it a lot.
That's how we sound, folks. And then Bruce, he sounds like this too. He's very...
he's locked in an attic. Of course, he's going to sound despondent.
No, you say despondent. I say tomato. You say tomato. I say Bruce Purkey's very reflective and introspective. And I don't think you and I are introspective or reflective at all. But we do sound like it. We do sound like that because our voice is so deep and we don't want to drone people out.
I answered that right away. I didn't have to reflect on anything.
Good. Comedy drum fill from Eric Holmes. Eric, before we get to our movies this week, we want to thank, and Eric and I, one thing we do is we make sure to thank our betters. Bruce Purkey this week, out of all of these movies, he's covered 5 of them. So can you and I give a nice clap to Bruce Purkey for doing our job?
Hi.
Yes. Hey, first of all, Eric Holmes, over at your domicile, please, you have been giving him people food the last several weeks, right? Does he get an extra beef bourguignon for reviewing 5 movies this week? A little bit of extra medallions with the steak that you're cooking?
So I went to Slim Chickens.
Okay.
And I was going to give him some of the food but the dogs got into it and ate it all. So
unbelievable, Eric.
Maybe next time.
Try to appreciate Bruce Purkey a little bit more this time. But remember, folks, over at CinemAddicts, if you want some really introspective, insightful reviews, Bruce Purkey has reviews of Wake Up, Parvulos, Children of the Apocalypse, Eric Larue, Hell of a Summer, and Freaky Tales. That's 5 movies out of the 6 movies we're doing. So, Eric, why are we...
So he didn't see When Fall is Coming?
No, I did it because it's
what
about
a slacker. Bruce, pick it up.
Pick it up, Bruce. Come on. Eric and I just want to banter for about 10 more minutes and then just throw it to you. Is that can we do that?
Speaking of banter, for those of you that listen to the Film Vault,
what show is that, Eric Holmes? Is that the show that CinemAddicts sprung forth from? What is it? What is the film?
Yes, it's got Brian Bishop, I believe it's his show, and his employee Anderson Cowan.
Yes, his employee. Because does Brian write all the checks? He does. Brian writes all the checks, right?
I don't know, but anyway, they do that. If you're familiar with it,
second in command is Avery, right? Avery's second in command after Brian.
That's
okay. Who's the guy who likes Steven Spielberg a lot? He likes the Post. He likes AI.
That's Brian.
Oh, that's
Brian. We already angered Anderson enough. We need to do it more. But
okay.
And well, so those that follow Film Vault, you already know.
Great podcast.
They do a Rotten Tomato gambling at the end, where they pick a movie that's coming out that week and they'll gamble what they think the Rotten Tomato score is going to be.
Right.
And they had a thing that if Brian and Anderson both choose the same number, and the final Rotten Tomato score ends up being that number when they record, then the show's over.
Wow.
And last week they did a Working Man. They both gambled 51%, and it's hovering around 51%. So we'll see if the show's gonna still be going on, and who knows, maybe Anderson will come back and take my seat that I've been keeping warm for him this whole time. And then the show will become a great show again.
No. Eric is saying that because
make CinemAddicts great again.
Oh, no. Eric Holmes, you are a great partner, as well as Bruce Purkey. Anderson Cowan, he is an egotistical bastard, and I don't want him on the show ever again. In fact, I removed
the
Anderson.
Exact opposite of that.
We love Anderson Cowan. We love bald Brian Bishop, and then Avery. Hopefully, I'm sure the TFB will move on. If they decide not to move on, and actually the show will be defunct after, I'm assuming, a nearly 20-year existence in the podcast sphere. The Film Vault's a great show, so I don't think it's gonna end. I don't think it's over. Eric, do you think it's really over? No, right? You don't think TFE is over?
Who
Okay.
knows? One thing we don't do here on Cinematics, we
We
don't
don't.
spoil things.
Oh, we don't. Well, no spoiler alert on that. If the film vault, let's just say, ever the what is it? The sky actually falls, and there is no more the film vault. Stepping up to the plate, just want to say the other show that Anderson Cowan co-created in the podcast world is Cinematic. So we might be next in line if the film vault falls. That might be the thing. But to be honest, Eric, the way that you and I have showed up the last several years on Cinematics and Bruce Purkey has pretty much been doing our job, I would say we're not second in line. Yeah, the alternate programming after the TFE would be Middle Class Film Class. Okay, great podcast. Force 5 podcast, Jason Kleberg, we love him, and then Hollywood Persona. Would you those three podcasts? Would you that's the next up in line for TFE to take the mantle, right? We're
Oh
like last.
yeah, for sure.
No, why listen to Any reason to listen to Cinematics? No, other than
I
Bruce.
mean, yeah, Bruce was keeping us afloat.
Yes, thank
Me
you,
and
Bruce.
you, I mean, you know what? We can talk about whatever we want because no one's listening to this part of the show. They just skipped right to Bruce's.
That's why I do the time tracks,
It's
folks.
like,
Thank you so
yeah, we
much.
know 4.5 stars, 6.9, whatever. Who cares? Let's see what Bruce has to say. I got crap to do. I can't
Who
wait
knows?
around with this.
Who knows? Maybe Eric and I will actually change that destiny, at least for a few moments with this episode, because we might have some really good movies to review aside from Bruce Purkey stuff over at the Cinematic. Because I know one thing, Eric is very passionate about this movie called Eric Larue. It's directed by Michael Shannon, and it's an adaptation of Brett Neveau's 2000 play about a mom, played by Judy Greer, I believe Judy Greer, right? She's coping
Yes.
with the fallout after her son murders three of his classmates. I did not want to watch Eric Larue just because of that sentence I just read. I do not. This seems so downbeat and morose, and I don't want. Look, it's just me. Okay, so I'm glad that Eric Holmes, you got to see it. And the husband is played by Alexander Skarsgård. The husband has found a refuge at the new church. But Janice, again played by Judy Greer, she finds it hard to seek solace in her faith, despite her pastor's pleas to heal her wounds by meeting the mother of her son's victims. Again, it is directed by actor Michael Shannon. The running time is 119 minutes. The Rotten Tomato score as of this writing recording is 75%. It's in theaters April 4th. I was too much of a chicken to watch Eric Larue because I did not want to be so depressed. And I'm glad that Eric saw it. Eric, you seem to be passionate in our messaging back and forth about Eric LaRue. Tell us your thoughts on this movie and yeah, paint us a picture.
And Allison Pill's in it. So there was
Oh,
that too.
she's great. Allison, okay, yes.
But yeah, it basically follows Judy Greer, Janice LaRue, and this is like her son Eric LaRue, school shooter, and
Wow.
so they don't show any of that. The movie starts, he's already in jail.
Okay.
The school shooting already happened, the trial, everything happened. He's in jail, and he's been in jail for some time now. And so we're following around his mom Janice, and she's kind of a pariah because she's the mom who, oh, you're the parent of the one that killed my child. You're the parent of the one that couldn't keep their kid in line and killed all those innocent kids. And so she's basically, not being treated very nice by her peers, which, you kind of get, but at the same time, she didn't do this school shooting. Her son did. Sometimes your kids do things that you don't agree with and you had nothing to do with, but you're the parent, so by proxy, you're the bad guy. We can't yell at the school shooter because he's in prison, but we can yell at you. We can shun you. She is trying to be coaxed into the church because, they prey on those who are weak, and, that's how churches work. Alexander Skarsgård falls into the church hook, line, sinker because where Janice she wants to confront the problem head on, and it's causing her a lot of turmoil. Her husband, Ron, wants to run away from the problem. And he does that by joining the church and absolving everyone of everything. And it's all God's decision. God's the judge of everything, and I don't have to deal with it, which not a great way to cope with things, but it's
I want
certainly a
to
good way to hide from things.
I want to say this, Eric. I am a churchgoer. I go to Catholic church, and I did like that little message you said about churchgoers. The only reason why I'm not going to push back on that comment is because you have a wonderful Vincent Price photo up in your wall, and you're my buddy. So I'm going to let you go on. And I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I love how you just
Well,
sneak that in. Sneak it in. I want to sneak it in too because
I mean, it's not wrong though, because Janice is trying to understand why her son did what he did. She's trying to
that's
understand why she's trying to find help from anybody. Like it's
right.
just someone that you don't even have to like me. I just want someone to listen to me, and she
She's going
doesn't
through
have that.
logical steps along the
Yeah.
way.
And
Okay,
the only people that want to talk to her is people from the church, but all they're going to do is proselytize, and they're not going to give her actual answers. They're going to say, it was God's decision and nothing's your fault and blah blah blah." And
that's true.
that's what I mean. Like, and that's safe for the husband, Ron, because he doesn't have to take accountability. He
Yeah,
just throws it on,
the
let
church.
yeah,
That's
you
fair.
know.
That's fair. That's
I
fair.
mean, that's where scapegoating came from. It came from the Bible. That
Yeah, yeah.
so anyway, the whole movie leads up to 'cause they talk about have you talked to Eric? Have you talked to him? No, no, not yet. And so the whole movie's leading up to Janice finally going to the jail and visiting Eric.
Whoa, whoa.
And then
Okay.
so the
All
whole
right.
last 20
Yeah.
minutes is a conversation between the mom and the son.
Okay.
And that's kind of yeah, the whole movie's just a setup to that punchline is not the right word, but that's the culmination is that last 20 minutes where you get that conversation. And I think that last conversation, I know Bruce had some issues with it, and me and Bruce were kind of going back and forth on that in the private
Chat.
chat before we
Yeah.
recorded this. I haven't heard his review of this yet, so I don't know where he landed on that.
Yeah, neither have I.
And honestly, I don't know where I land on it either because it's one of those things. It's a difficult conversation that they have. On one hand, like from Bruce's perspective, he's like, does the movie absolve people, or is the movie saying this or that? And I think my perception of that is that the movie doesn't care one way or another.
Oh, good
It's just
point.
presenting it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the mom thinks this thing, the son thinks this thing, the people think this thing, and the movie's kind of working like a documentary in a sense where we're not judging anyone, we're just noting everything down and reporting on it.
So
And
does the movie work on a presentation level from that POV for you as a
I,
cinephile?
it does. It's
Okay.
and like it's weird. Actually, I don't even know how to answer that because like as a cinephile, that brain was gone.
Mm.
I'm worried about, I'm thinking of the situation and the characters and how they navigate through that. And especially that last 20 minutes when they have that conversation, like I'm just watching the back and forth between them. And this is a really good movie. I think yeah, directed by Michael Shannon based on a play
Yeah.
by Brett Nouveau. Apparently, this was a play that Michael Shannon saw like back before he was doing Bug, and he's wanted to get this movie made for a while, and he finally got to. But actually, I think if I remember right, I think the play was made before Columbine even.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah, yeah.
when the story was written, the idea of like school shootings being ubiquitous wasn't a thing. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's the timeline of the original story. I think it was just meant to be a parent put in an impossible position and they're trying to navigate their way out of it. And especially like the whole idea that she's a pariah and who does she talk to about that? You have family members that die. You can meet any number of people that had family members die, and you can talk to them about it. You can go back and forth. What did you feel about this? This is what I'm feeling. And then you can connect on that level. If your child's a school shooter, how many parents of school shooters do you know? How many
Right.
support groups? Like school shootings happen way more than they should, but not so much that you can just walk down the street and talk to the other family that also had a child that was a school shooter. There's not that support group sort of thing where you can kind of talk it over and come to some sort of maybe we're wrong, maybe we're right, maybe we could do this better. You can talk to like-minded people, and she's in a position, and both parents are in a position where they don't have anyone but each other to talk about that, and they're both going on different paths, and so they can't even really do that. They're just kind of thrown into a void, I guess.
How does this movie compare, if you recall, compared to that 2021 film? Mass. Do you sort of remember it with
Matt,
Jason
yeah,
Isaacs and Martha Plimpton? And
I
remember,
remember that well. So Mass was kind of a different situation because it's the parents of the shooter versus the parents of the victim, and the whole movie is them hashing it out right there and then. So this is in this, Janice isn't put in a position where she gets to actually sit down one on one with the people, her peers. They just kind of make snide comments and move on. So there's never a conversation. She just has to, well, I guess this is my life now. And when she does have one-on-one conversations, they're never legitimate conversations. They're either from the church that wants to pull her into the church to get more members in the flock, or there's someone that's her friend and doesn't want to have a real conversation with her and just wants to placate her. Like she doesn't get any actual real information from anybody.
so it's based on a play. Does it feel like a play when you're watching it? And if so, is it a negative aspect of the movie or
Mhm.
not? Is it opened up as a movie?
I mean, I could see how this would be a play. It doesn't quite read like that in the movie
Okay.
because like she's all over the town
Okay.
and going everywhere. So it's got more of a killing a two lovers kind of vibe to it.
Oh, yeah.
Where like you could see where you could condense that down to a play, but the characters are moving all around town, so it doesn't really feel like that when you're watching it.
Okay, so that is Eric LaRue. It's in theaters April 4th. Again, directed by Michael Shannon, starring Judy Greer and Alexander Skarsgård. The runtime is 119 minutes. Eric, final thoughts and rating on Eric LaRue.
It's 5 stars for me. I would like to say more, but those
Oh,
that more I
say
would.
more. I'm sorry.
Oh well, I can't because that would be all spoiler stuff. That's what I'm saying.
Eric.
But because I think where this movie really shines, and
Oh.
Bruce was saying there was something called Adolescence, like a four
Oh,
part
right, from Netflix. Yeah.
4 hour series
Yeah.
that I guess does things better. I don't know because I didn't see Adolescence. I can say this isn't 4 hours, so a thumbs up there.
Yeah.
But
Did you
I
feel the
think
length? Did you feel 119 minutes? And if so, is that okay too? The length is fine for you?
I did only because the movie was projecting that it was going towards that final conversation,
All right.
and I was waiting for that.
Okay.
So it's kind of like the days leading up to Christmas. That's a bad analogy
Very,
because
yeah,
Christmas
yeah.
is enjoyable, like this conversation. But like I'm waiting for that conversation. Real interested to hear that final conversation. But you got to be patient because everything leading up to it's kind of setting you up for that.
And it's a
But
five-star film because it just hit all of those levels.
yeah, it hit, and then that conversation at the end, it wasn't. Part of it went exactly as I thought it would. Other parts of it kind of took strange turns. I was like, oh, that's yeah. I would not have expected that character saying that or feeling that way, but it tracks. Like it
Okay.
doesn't come off as false.
Okay.
And so yeah, this is pretty well put together. And hey, Michael Shannon, great job on your debut.
That is awesome. Again, Eric LaRue. Eric Holmes gave Eric LaRue 5 stars. Theaters April 4th. Let us know your thoughts on this movie once you see it. Well, after your 5-star rating, I'm actually interested in watching Eric LaRue. Who cares what rating Bruce Purkey's going to give it in a few moments? I'm
Now,
going
if
to
it
go
was called Greg LaRue, maybe I give it only 4 stars.
with very good.
If it was
It's
called
called
Bruce LaRue, maybe 3.5, but it was called Eric LaRue, so it gets 5.
5 stars. Very, very, very good. Next up is a movie, French film called When Fall is Coming. Here is the official plot synopsis. Quote, loving grandmother Michelle is enjoying a peaceful retirement in Burgundy when her antagonistic daughter and young grandson come to visit. Family ties are tested in this twisty and destabilizing thriller from master stylist Francois Ozon. Ozon? I don't know how to pronounce the name, and I apologize. Ozon. I should have actually looked at YouTube to see the proper pronunciation. It's in theaters April 4th. The Rotten Tomatoes is 92%. I have to look up. I did not put the name of the actress. I believe her name is Helen Vincent, or actually, Eric, when a name is spelled Helen with an E, is it Helene Vincent or Helen Vincent? When something like that, what would you call? Where would you side? Would you side
It's
on
it's
Helene or
impossible to say. So many people spell names differently and pronounce them differently. It's kind of like the English language. There's no rules. It's your name, however you want to pronounce it. That's how it should be pronounced. Unfortunately, we don't have you know We can't talk to the person always and say, "How do you pronounce your name?"
Okay, so it's Helene. I'm going to say Helene Vincent. She plays Michelle. She's the grandmother in When
Helena,
Fall is Coming.
maybe. That seems like it makes sense.
Let's just
Helena.
say, yeah, we'll do the middle, and I'll just make sure that hey,
Yeah.
caveat is I'm wrong. Okay, Helene Vincent. She plays
There you go.
Grandma Michelle. When she realizes her daughter, she comes. Supposedly grandmother, the daughter comes home to visit the mother. Okay, the daughter has a son, so that's Michelle's grandson, and she's so attached to this grandson. She's looking forward to having a week with the grandson for vacation in her retirement home in Burgundy. She's looking forward to it. Unfortunately, her daughter is a stick in the mud. Her daughter, for some reason, does not show her mother any kind of respect or love. Her daughter's always on the phone, and she tells, due to some mishap regarding mushrooms, okay, over dinner, the daughter decides not to have her son stay with the grandmother. And Michelle is thrown for a loop because she's elderly now and she just wants to spend some quality time with her grandson. And now that's taken away from her. And what is she going to do about it? Now, coincidentally, her best friend and neighbor is they have morning walks, they have a nice situation going, they have a really good friendship. Her best friend's son has recently been released from prison. And her best friend's son's a little bit possibly a troublemaker. He's a former felon. And then she ends up hiring that former felon, to do work on our house. So the puzzle pieces are set in motion. She's not seeing her grandson. She doesn't get along with her daughter. Again, that grandmother Michelle, played by Helene Vincent, she might have a dark past. You don't know what it is. And things are set in motion. And just remember the ambition behind When Fall is Coming is Michelle's absolute yearning to see her grandson and to spend some more quality time with her grandson as much as possible. I'm not going to spoil the rest of the movie. Just know that I'm giving you guys that sort of puzzle pieces all across the board, and you can fit them together. There's one big caveat of this movie, however. It's a very subtly told movie. If you want everything spelled out for you, well, you're not going to get it. And Eric, I don't know if this is a big thing for you. When you see a mystery thriller, Eric, and the director, he or she, they will leave out certain conversations or pieces to the puzzle before the puzzle's actually solved. How do you feel like when you look at the end and you see the entire puzzle, but the director, he or she, took certain pieces of the puzzle out along the story and is assuming that they didn't need it, but you really did need it? Do you get frustrated when not all of the evidence is shown at the end of the movie? That's what I'm asking you.
Are we talking about like
a mystery thriller?
At the end of the movie, there's a twist, and then they show you the pieces they should have shown you along the way, but they hid it because they wanted to have that twist at the end.
Right, and their excuse
That's annoying.
like,
I hate that.
Okay.
That's what you call cheating. If you gotta take out key information only to show you at the end,
devil's advocate,
that
Eric,
means you don't have a twist.
Devil's advocate. Well, Eric, I'm a filmmaker. I'm showing you just a flavor of the story, and it's very subtly inferred, and you can put the pieces together because you're an adult. What kind of That's the devil's advocate. What would you say to that? That's still cheating, right?
So if it's a situation where they're trying to manufacture a twist, that's just garbage.
Okay,
you're just a bad story.
That doesn't happen.
If it's a situation where they're leaving out bits because they want you to reflect on things, and or maybe they tell a story and then they leave off the final thing that happened because they know that they've prepared you to know what happens after that. Like that's a different situation. But if they're just trying to manufacture a twist and hiding information, it's cheating.
Eric, I think it's a little bit halfway with your observation. With When Fall is Coming, there are hints that are left out, and people will find that frustrating. But you as a viewer are supposed to actually fill in the pieces yourself because it's pretty obvious what the actual puzzle is. So it's one of those things, Eric, where
so they're not trying to do a twist, like they're projecting what the ending is. They're just kind of leaving stuff out for you to.
That's right, Eric. It's like,
okay,
example,
yeah, that's a different thing. I thought you were talking talking about like Fight Club, for instance, like they give you all the
Oh,
clues up
right,
until
sure,
the
of course.
twist.
Yeah.
Like if they kept all that stuff out and then threw it in at the end, like, haha, you didn't figure it out. I was like, of course I didn't. You didn't tell me anything.
It's one of those things where you actually, at the end, you understand what's going on. But personally, I would have liked to have those scenes into the puzzle. But
Yeah.
even though I know exactly what the director, Francois Ozon, is trying to do at the end, I understand it. I would have liked a couple of those pieces in. But that is the allure of When Fall is Coming. It's a weird thing. I wanted those scenes, but then I understand where the director was going. He wanted to keep a couple of those pieces out and actually have the viewers give their own interpretation regarding the grandmother Michelle. And there will be a lot of conversations about, is Michelle a really wonderful, nice, loving grandmother, or is she not? So it's a thriller that is not like a Brian De Palma in your face, gory slasher, just provocative thriller. It's not like that. It's more of a quiet thriller where it's very subtle, and I appreciated it. And I actually really enjoyed When Fall is Coming. I don't know if I'm gonna roundly recommend it for people to say, hey, if you like mystery thrillers, go see When Fall is Coming. I would just say, because if you want a subtle touch to your mystery thriller slash family drama, When Fall is Coming is a pretty good film. I'm giving When Fall is Coming in theaters starting April 4th, 102 minutes, not rated. By the way, Rotten Tomatoes, 92% currently. I'm giving When Fall is Coming 4 stars.
So
Really
real
enjoy.
quick, just to go back on what you were saying. So this is more like an unreliable narrator thing, where like you get one person's perspective and it's leaving stuff out because that's their perspective, and you get someone else's perspective and that's different because that's how they saw thing. Is that
Well,
kind of
yeah, a little bit like that. It's like, for example, most of the movie is centered through the POV of, like you said, the grandmother, Michelle. You see things from her POV. So when you're always following her, you're empathizing or sympathizing with her situation. And then when things go on, you're wondering, did she have anything to do with that? Because I didn't see that scene. Because you're just in her. There's a lot of things that she keeps secrets, and then keeps secrets from the viewer as well. So a little
okay?
bit of that unreliable narrator touch. But I think ultimately it's
Okay.
also a creative flourish that some people will really love, and
Okay.
some
Yeah,
people.
that's not nearly as annoying as what I thought you were saying earlier.
Okay, okay.
The thing I thought you were saying earlier is like if that's how you're telling a story, just don't. But this sounds a little more nuanced than that.
Eric, yeah. So Eric and I have one more movie, and remember, just the
I got I
listen
got I
to.
got two.
Oh yeah, we're gonna headline that in a few moments as well.
Oh no,
But
Freaky Tales.
oh, you saw Freaky Tales?
Yeah,
Oh my goodness, Eric Holmes. Yeah, Freaky Tales.
it, it
Here's the.
is freaky.
It's very freaky. Oh, I told you, Eric, not to relax and look at you. You just did a lot of work this morning, which is I
Well,
give
you
you
put
credit.
on that Rotten Tomato score is 69%. How am I not going to watch?
It's in theaters April 4th. And I'm just going to give the very, very quick plot summary. Set in 1987 Oakland, Freaky Tales. It's a multi-track mixtape of colorful characters. I think one of the NBA stars is Sleepy Floyd. It's not the real Sleepy Floyd in the movie, but it's a sort of a little bit of a story about Sleepy Floyd and his confrontation with someone. There's a corrupt cop. There's a female rap duo, teen punks, neo-Nazis. There's a debt collector. There's music from, actually executive produced by Too Short. The ensemble cast includes Pedro Pascal, Ben Mendelsohn, Jay Ellis, Normani, Dominique Thorne, some really good actors, the late Angus Cloud. And I don't know if there is actually a big celebrity, which Eric Holmes, you're not going to spoil it, because
No,
you want me to spoil it or not?
no,
Because,
don't,
oh,
don't,
don't
don't.
spoil. I will say this,
Absolutely do not.
Eric, can I say this? I'm going to give you one more shot. That celebrity is in movie reviews. They named the celebrity.
They
It's
shouldn't.
actually part of the plot. So I'm gonna let you review it without, and you're
No,
the.
that they're only in it for like a scene and then a part like at the mid credits, and it was a complete joyous surprise.
Oh, okay.
If it's spoiled somewhere else, that's fine. Will not be spoiled here.
Okay, and Bruce Purkey, if you spoil it on your cinematic, then Eric Holmes, we haven't listened to your reviews yet. Eric Holmes really will only give you not people food for the next 4 weeks. Okay, so I'm just laying down that rule, Eric Holmes. But what is your review of Freaky Tales?
Yeah, this is kind of like a Pulp Fiction, Magnolia sort of thing. A bunch of different kind of kind of plays like an anthology, but the anthologies all kind of meld together in one movie, kind of like how Magnolia or Pulp Fiction does it. And it's set in '87, and it's got kind of like the '80s look to it. Where I mean, I remember watching things in the '80s, and that it's got that '80s sheen that wasn't actually present in the '80s. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like you think of the like the retro wave music. It's like, ooh, this sounds like '80s music. It's like, no, it sounds like what people in the 2000s think '80s sounds like, but it didn't actually sound like that. It's got that kind of look to it, but it's a cool look, so I don't mind. You
It's not. It
start
doesn't. Does it get annoying? All that
no,
shtick. Okay.
no.
Good.
I mean, if you find that stuff annoying, then this will, but I'm fine with it. But anyway, you're following a bunch of punk kids, and they go to a punk show and getting this whole epic battle with a bunch of Nazi skinheads. And then that somehow culminates into a story with Pedro Pascal, where he's like a not really a hitman, but more like a bruiser,
Mm-hmm.
and he's doing his last job, and then some stuff goes awry, and then the final one is the sleepy.
Floyd. Yeah.
See,
And
that was a real person.
yeah, Sleepy Floyd.
Okay, I did.
Okay, sorry, Sleepy Floyd. I think it was with the Golden State Warriors, right? Up in the Bay, right? And he's best known. He was a great guard, and he's best known for a 29-point fourth quarter. I forget against which team, but he is considered one of the greatest scorers from the '80s, Sleepy Floyd. So
Okay,
yeah.
but yeah, that it culminates on that with I mean, essentially a Kill Bill
Oh, cool.
sort of thing. And yeah, they kind of interconnect, like even with it, like the part during the with the punk kids versus the Nazis, like two of them are talking, and Pedro Pascal just walks by and it's like, oh, Pedro Pascal's in this, cool. That, and then he's just kind of like basically a extra. But then later on, you see him going in that same place, and you see the two punk kids there, and they're in the background. So like there's a bunch of stuff like that where the stories overlap and kind of and they're more than just those sort of ancillary things. Like they actually come together pretty realistically towards the end, and it's incredible amount of fun.
Is it just
Very
an incredible amount of fun? Because here's the
yes,
thing: the movie's directed by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. Their last
the
movie,
Mississippi Grind,
yes,
Half Nelson,
and their masterpiece, 2019. Can you say it?
what Captain Marvel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
see,
This is
this is the problem with
I like
with
Captain
comic
Marvel, and
book
I'm just
movies.
kidding. Okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Captain Marvel was fine. It's a
Yes,
perfectly fine
fine movie.
superhero movie.
Yes,
Uh, Comic book nerds hated it. With Eternals, they got Chloe Zhao. Eternals I thought was a really good comic book movie.
cool.
Comic book nerds hated it. The comic book nerds, you people are spoiled. You're getting all these great filmmakers to come in and make your little superhero movies, and you turn your nose up at them and just crap on them. And you know what? And on top of that, they're doing the little superhero movies, and they can't even put their fingerprints in it. Make it even extra special because the Disney thumb won't let them.
Wait,
And
what's
why won't the Disney thumb let off of them? Because of you. You won't try anything interesting. Ryan Johnson tried that with Star Wars, and the Star Wars fans crapped all over it. And now we followed it up with the Rise of Skywalker, and Star Wars from then on has just been kind of boring.
Eric Ben Mendelsohn? I just realized he starred in Captain Marvel. He starred
Yes,
in Mississippi
Grind.
Grind. Is that yeah? And is he in Freaky Tales as well?
Yes,
Oh, that's pretty cool,
yeah.
huh?
He's yeah.
He's our favorite actor.
We'll leave it at that.
Okay, good,
He's in
good.
it.
Okay,
That I
cool.
almost said too much, but anyway, yeah, this has like a bunch of little details in it, of fun asides. It's got kind of a similar vibe to Frankie Frico, oddly enough.
Okay.
Not quite that silly, but it's got that same kind of amount of fun to it. And yeah, so the weird thing about the Sleepy Johnson guy is
Stevie
that
Floyd,
there's
yeah. Stevie Floyd,
Sleepy
yeah.
Floyd
Yeah.
is that there's Entice and Barbie, and I thought they were supposed to be like Salt and Pepper,
Okay.
like Salt and Pepper without being Salt and Pepper. I thought
Sure.
that's what they're going with.
Yeah, the rap group. Yeah, the
Um,
rap duo. Yeah.
and so I just assumed that the Sleepy guy was just a made up name. But
No, yeah,
apparently,
no, seriously. Sleepy Floyd. Isn't that cool? Isn't that a cool name? No matter what sport, right? Sleepy Floyd.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
But yeah. Anyway, Sleepy Floyd. He's like turns out to be like the whole thing because throughout each story, you see this weird green stuff, like green glowy stuff.
Yeah.
So it's got kind of a Repo Man sort of backstory to it.
Or it looks like the what the scrawl or whatever stuff from Captain
No,
Marvel. The
more
green.
more
Okay.
more closer to Repo Man.
Okay.
Like
Cool. Yeah.
there's some alien thing or some magic thing or something weird going on with this green glowy stuff, and you always see it come up when something weird is about to happen, and that happens in each of the stories.
Okay.
So yeah, Pulp Fiction, Magnolia, Repo Man, Green Room. It's got a little green room in there. Frankie Frico. I mean, these are like it. This movie took all those movies, Sturton and Gumbo, and go, here you go, Freaky Tales. And I watched it and went, yes, 6.9 stars. I love it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, this
Yeah.
movie's rad.
This movie, okay, so were you expecting to love it as much because you were thinking it's going to be an 80s pastiche? Were you thinking you might get annoyed by it
So,
because it,
no, well, so
or might be
Bruce,
gimmicky, that kind of thing?
no, Bruce watched this before I did and
Okay.
said, Eric, this looks like a movie for you. And usually when he says that, he's right.
Okay. All
And so
right.
when he said that, I'm like, oh, I got time before we record today. I'll throw in Freaky Tales. That's why I watched it and didn't put it in the Google Docs until just recently.
My goodness. So am I missing out by not watching Freaky Tales this week, Eric?
I would say anyone that doesn't see Freaky Tales is missing out. This is kind of like usually we only get one movie like this a year, and so far we got two with this and Rats, and I feel like I'm missing another one.
Yes.
But yeah, like yeah, you had the Psycho Gorman, or you have the Dinner in America. You know, you have your Greasy Strangler.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, Frankie Frico. And then now this year we got Freaky Tales and we got Rats. They both have that same kind of. And this one's got like this one's feels like it should be like an indie movie, like the other ones I mentioned. But this is not an indie movie. Like this has like a all-star cast and the directors
Oh, they're
came
good.
off of Captain Marvel.
And I'm kidding.
Uh,
I like Captain Marvel.
and not to get off on a tangent
I
again,
like
but
Half
this,
Nelson. I like Half Nelson too. And Sugar was good. Sugar's good.
not
Yeah.
to get on off on a tangent again,
Good
but
filmmakers. Yeah.
when these filmmakers are doing Captain Marvel, they're not doing this.
Yeah.
And not only are they not doing this, but they're doing some bullcrap comic book movie or Star Wars that they can't even put their fingerprints on. And then the people that watch those movies don't even appreciate it.
Right.
So they're wasting their time on those kind of movies to what end? Just so we lose another movie as good as Freaky Tales.
Okay. Can I say this is on the devil's advocate part is for something like Captain Marvel to exist, isn't it also made a little bit, even though you can't put your complete stamp on something like that, isn't it a Captain Marvel film better with the filmmakers from Freaky Tales behind the camera? Or do you think it doesn't matter sometimes?
I don't think it matters. It's a
That's
Kevin
fair.
Feige movie. It's not a, you
All
know,
right.
I could be way off on that, you know.
I'm trying to get Marvel to
But
sponsor CinemAddicts and this
oh yes,
for the big bucks.
absolutely,
Yeah, right.
absolutely. What you said,
But we're not going to be sponsored by no, in fair. I get you. I get you.
it just feels like a waste. Like just find uninteresting filmmakers and just have them do the Marvel movies. They'll turn out the exact same no matter what.
So you're saying Eternals would have done the same, because you like
Eternals, no, Eternals looks like a Chloe Zhao movie.
Oh, very cool.
Now I
got to see
does
that.
that does.
All right.
I think if someone else did Eternals, it would look way different than it did.
Is
So
it
I'll give
frustrating?
it that.
Is it frustrating for you that most people were not fans of Eternals because and you liked it?
I honestly I don't care if they like
Huh.
Eternals or not. The whole point is why bother?
Why
The
bother?
the people that love comic book movies don't want the formula changed too much.
Mm.
They want what's on the comic book page brought to life, and that's it.
On a one-to-one basis.
They
I
want
got you.
Wolverine punching Superman. You know, they want these really and I know this because, you know, growing up reading comic books, that's what I wanted. You know, I
Mm.
just wanted the very surface level. I want them to look like they do in the comics. I want them the Wolverine punching Magneto. I want Magneto stripping all the adamantium out of Wolverine. I want
Yeah.
I want to see Superman fight Brainiac instead of Lex Luthor for the 500th time. Like these are the things I want. It's all surface level, has nothing to do with story. So why bother getting interesting filmmakers to do that?
That's a
Anyone
very
can
good
do that.
That is a very good point, Eric.
And then you get interesting filmmakers to do that. They're spending their time or wasting their time doing something that the comic book nerds aren't going to like anyway. Or if they like, they'll like just as much as if some journeyman filmmaker did it. And then now that's one less freaky tale in the world.
Right. Well, Eric, they're not completely wasting their time because they can save all their Captain Marvel money and one day make Freaky Tales. Maybe, right?
There you go. There you go.
We do have to wait 6 years for it, though, right, Eric? Right? We had to wait 6 years for it.
Yeah.
In fairness, these filmmakers, they've done.
Or you're Edgar Wright and you're trying to make Ant-Man, spend like 5 years on that and then get that pulled out from under your feet and then spend another 15 years trying to make your follow-up movie to.
Now you got the Running Man. Running Man, right? He's doing Running Man. So Freaky Tales, 6.9 stars from Eric Holmes. It's really good. Rotten Tomatoes score currently at 69%. Hopefully it doesn't go down to something like 51% like that TFV score. Hopefully
it stays at 69%. That's a perfect score.
That is a perfect score. Now, we're gonna have one final review, and then after that, Eric will have a movie possible recommendation for you guys if you guys want to see it. Now, I have a problem with this episode right now because Eric, we covered some really good movies. But I just wanted us to talk about Parvulos, Children of the Apocalypse. It's a movie, it's set in a dystopian future ravaged by a viral apocalypse. There are three young brothers, Salvador, Oliver, and Benjamin. Again, Salvador, Oliver, and Benjamin. They find themselves isolated in a remote cabin deep in the woods. As they navigate this world, this post-apocalyptic dystopian world, they harbor a dark and disturbing secret in their basement. There's something in their bleeping basement. There's a presence they must feed to ensure their own survival. Do you guys know what's in the basement? Eric and I will not.
No.
It says that in the plot summary. I agree.
I know, but
I agree. I know. Look, there's something in the basement, folks. That's all.
We'd say there's a monster in the basement.
Okay.
There's absolutely a monster in the basement.
Do you want to say what kind of monsters or creatures might lurk in the forest, or should we keep that secret? I'm gonna yield.
Actually, I watched a movie and I still don't know exactly. Like,
interesting.
It's
that's
adjacent to something that people would recognize, but like it's a little different than that.
I just realized this before we started taping, Eric. This movie, Párvulos, Children of the Apocalypse, is directed by Isaac Esban, and I remember that name for some reason. And I remember, 5 years ago, I interviewed him for a movie called Parallel, which you probably don't remember. I remember a little bit of. We reviewed it on probably Movie Mainland or Find Your Film back in the day. And he's an interesting filmmaker. It's currently at 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's in theaters April 4th. I will say a couple of warnings because you might push back on this.
I will not. If it's the one warning I'm thinking of, you absolutely should warn people on that.
Why don't I'll yield the floor to you. Why don't you give the listeners a warning immediately for Párvulos, Children of the Apocalypse?
So they're in a post-apocalypse, so they eat whatever they can. One of the things they eat is a dog, and you get a pretty graphic butchering of that dog.
And if you are a huge fan of worms, like little earthworms, you're not gonna like what happens to a bunch of earthworms.
I think people will be more upset about the dog scene than the worm scene. But yeah, they're in a post-apocalyptic. So like they don't have packaged meat, whatever handy. So they got to grab whatever they can. They're trying to build crops, raise crops. They have rats that they're raising. They're constantly like feeding the rats and trying to like grow more rats. They don't actually eat those. That's for something. That's for the monster in the basement. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they come across a dog. They kill the dog, eat that.
And that's not a spoiler. This is a warning. This is a huge warning.
But yeah, these monsters are the apocalypse. So that's why it's post-apocalypse, because these monsters are out and about, and they have one in the basement for reasons that will become clear. I got a pretty good idea of what it was early on.
Same
but
here.
They don't. It doesn't actually tell you until 40 minutes into
100%. You're right. 100%.
So I don't think it's fair to really give that away.
Eric mentioned 40 minutes. And it's very interesting he said that because I was looking on my, I apologize, folks. I'm watching a lot of these movies on my iPad. I was watching the video link on my iPad. 40 minutes in, that's when Parvulos, Children of the Apocalypse, that's when I really settled into this movie. For me, it was a little bit of slow burn for the first 40 minutes because you're trying to figure out what
It's
the
a
heck is going.
creepy ass slow burn.
It's creepy.
It's
What's
just like,
going
what the
on?
hell am I even
Wait,
watching?
that's freaking. Is that Benji? Oh no, that Benji's on a freaking table. What's there's really weird things that are going on, and you have to at least it took a little bit of patience on my end to stay through the 40 minutes. But then after that, a lot of things kicked in. And then several days later, I'm still thinking about this movie. I really enjoyed where this movie went plot wise, but I have no idea what Bruce thought of this movie. I want to know, Eric, your thoughts on Parvulos Children of the Apocalypse. Did it work for you? Was it visionary? Was it at least interesting? Did it, whatever? Yeah. So, yeah.
I was kind of with you at the beginning because I was kind of thrown off because I was called Children of the Apocalypse, but when the movie starts, like I forget the title of the movies often that I'm watching. I just put them on and start watching them, and like just watching them, like grab a handful of worms, put some, I assume it's honey. I don't know what he put in
And
there.
then mash it up.
Use
Right.
that pestle and mortar to mash
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
up,
Right.
and
That right.
it's like, what is he like
Ew.
doing an energy drink or
That's disgusting, man.
he's trying to
That's
get more like it was hard to nail down what this movie was, but it was like so it was weird. It was weird, but it wasn't so in your face weird. It was just like a little off.
and the
Because
filming,
other
the color
than
tones of the movie were weird too.
yeah, it was like a kind of like a sepia or like a
Mm,
black and white or but
right.
not really. It was
Yeah,
like
weird.
extremely muted, except in certain parts where they're looking at pictures or
Yes.
like yeah. I was gonna say where blood showed up, but that was the Freaky Tales where that happened. But yeah, it was just it was kind of it was off, but it wasn't off so much. It was off just enough to like kind of make you at unease. Because like with the worms thing, for example, that's not weird except for the fact that there's worms in it. If it was like eggs, we wouldn't even think twice about it. It was just a normal scene. But that's what I'm talking about. The scenes are pretty normal, but there's just like one thing that's kind of off about it, which kind of threw me off most of it until yeah, it got to about the halfway point where you start to settle into it and you realize what it is. Like, okay, I see what's going on. And then
Did the movie ultimately kick in for you though after the 40 minutes and when you settled?
it kicked in right away. It wasn't that I didn't like it.
Oh, okay,
I
my bad.
settled into it that, okay, now I know what this is. Before I was just like fascinated, but I was like, I'm lost. Like, I don't know where we are. I don't know what this movie's saying. Like, I don't know. All I know is that I'm watching the things that happen in front of me and I'm leaning forward.
Oh, very good.
Very, very similar to this movie right here,
Okay.
Lose the
Oh,
Flower of Evil.
oh yeah, great movie.
It's like set in like the past, old timies, and then they come across like a tape recorder. It's like, wait,
Right.
what? It's got that kind of thing to it where it's like everything seems normal, but there's just that one thing that throws you off a little bit. That's like, I we're in a strange place, and I
Speak,
can't quite put my finger on.
yeah, speaking of throwing off, there's a couple of situations in this movie, okay, where I'm thinking, oh no, you're not gonna go there. That's not gonna happen. Wait, wait, wait. Something's got to help. Wait, wait, wait. Oh my gosh, that just happened. That happened to me twice. Okay. At the time, I was I didn't want it to happen at that time, and it happened. And the fact that it did happen, it raised my review of this movie a little bit more. I appreciated that Isaac Esban went there with certain moments. I don't know how you felt. I think you know the moments I'm talking about, but
Uh, I
yeah.
mean, there's so many of them for
Oh,
me.
okay.
I don't know
Okay.
which one in
Okay.
particular.
Okay. Good. Good. Good.
I will say can I say this? The acting,
Okay. Yeah. The acting. Yeah. Of course. The
not
kids.
with the kids.
Oh, the act, or
Other,
the other people coming in, or other people, or how about other beings coming into the picture?
yeah, I couldn't tell if those are humans or puppets.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh my.
just the movements and everything were such that like, is that a human actor? Is that CGI? Is that a puppet? I don't know what that
Is
is,
that a good
but
thing that you didn't know?
that's
Because
a great thing because that just helped further immerse me into this and further like I'm not even watching a movie. This is a documentary. This happened on some distant planet that I know nothing about.
and also it's really
Like the
Right, right. Children, remember, Parvulos, children of the apocalypse. Where there are children, you're thinking about family drama. I hate to say this, but we're talking about all these weird, surreal things. I think at the heart of this movie, it's about time and change and families and whatnot, all set up within this weird situation. So I ended up, my rating for Parvulos Children of the Apocalypse, even after this review, I was going to give it 4 stars. I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars because this is a movie that I know weeks from now, months from now, I will be thinking about this movie
it's
again, even
impossible not to.
right.
Like
100%. And the images of this movie, and that's what cinema is supposed to do. There are moments in this movie where I will never be able to erase. Okay. And that has to have some credit as well. So worth
and
watching.
we don't have to talk about it in detail, but that ending,
Oh, yeah.
like I mean, pretty much that whole entire like third act. But this is another example of like you think you know where it's going, and then it kind of ends not on like a big twist or anything, but just
Right.
where it ends, it's like that's just like it's like Lake George. It ended exactly where it needed to.
Yes. That's another underrated movie. Eric, your rating on Parvulous Children of the Apocalypse.
I mean, we got two 6.9 star ratings
6.9
this
stars.
week.
Again, oh well, that's basically classic rating from Eric Holmes. He loved it. And Eric, again, before we say this, both Eric and I really love this movie. We don't know what Bruce's rating is right now for Parvulous Children of the
Isaac,
Apocalypse.
hopefully Isaac Asmon gets to do a Green Lantern movie, and it's just completely by the numbers. All the comic book nerds hate it, and then we won't see anything else from Isaac Asmon for another 15 years. He'll
Or
come out with something
or
else great.
yes, that's right. As long as he comes out, as long as Isaac Asman comes out with some stuff great and very singular, like Parvulous Children, I can't believe there are some stuff in the movie that he put in. I just cannot believe that happened. So again, the caveat, Eric, and our
The
caveat.
caveat is watch this movie and go, holy crap, what was that? This was awesome.
Enough said. Enough said. All right, that is it.
And then double feature it with Freaky Tales and go, holy crap, what was that? That was
So a couple awesome movies this week. Parvulous Children of the Apocalypse. Again, it's in theaters April 4th. In moments, please listen to Bruce Purkey's review of this movie along with other movies as well. Before we wrap up our portion of CinemAddicts, Eric Holmes, you have a recommendation for our listeners to possibly check out.
I do. Well, I don't know that I can really review this. I give it a score because my friends are in it. But it's called The Headliner. It's available. I can rent or buy. I rented it for like $2, $3, something like that on the Amazons. But Derek Silkman's in it. He's my friend from back in Omaha. And him and the director Tony Bonacci it was either on this or
Find your film,
Find Your
maybe.
Film. It was back when they were doing the crowdsource for this,
Okay, cool.
the GoFundMe to raise money to make this, and the movie's finally out. It's based on a short that Tony Bonacci did that Derek Silkman starred in, and it's basically just following a comedian, a couple of comedians. It's Derek Silkman and Bruce Briggs plays Bruce Bradley, and they're both comedians at this comedy club in Omaha. And the lady that runs the club kind of sets them on a tour to go to Chicago, where they'll meet a scout that wants to get maybe one or both of them to show up in Montreal.
Mm.
And they're middle-aged comedians. They've been at it for a while, and this is kind of like, well, Derek Silkman is. Bruce Briggs is kind of like, or Bruce Bradley. He's been kind of taking this more seriously. Chad Allen's been kind of like, he would go up on stage and just kind of wing it as he goes. Like he's funny, but like he's not that, he's not going to get over the hump because he doesn't take it seriously. There's also issue with his ex-wife and his daughter. His daughter is going to get married soon, and he hasn't been the best dad. And then so obviously it comes to a head. Do you show up to their daughter's wedding? Or do you show up to the comedy thing that you've been working your whole life for, but not really working? Like, you got to do this. You got to choose between these two things, and you haven't really worked very hard at either one of them. And so it's kind of a strange situation, and it's a strange way of presenting the situation because like the character is kind of like Chad knows he's a he knows he's a bad dad. In fact, his daughter knows he's a bad dad. So like it's kind of a weird situation because like everyone kind of expects this of him. It's like I'm not, they even say in the movie, it's like I'm not mad at you. Like that's being mad at you happened a long time ago. Like we're not there anymore. We're well past being mad at you. It's kind of like disappointed, but also at the same time, kind of what's expected. It's kind of aloof, and kind of a movie like this would usually be like all serious music, all serious all the time, but it's pretty funny. I mean, it's comedian, so Rachel Ware. She's a comedian in Omaha. She's got a couple of bits because, like, they got a couple of bits where they do, show a little bit of their comedy stand up
Cool.
with Chad and Bruce. They'll show their comedy stand up, but then they're on a road trip, so they'll show their same kind of. They'll show them doing the same thing a couple of times because that's how comedians do it. They like kind of work on their stuff. But Rachel Ware, we see her, and there's a couple other comedians I'm not familiar with, but they were funny. But Rachel Ware is she's a hilarious comedian anyway. And then watching her in her little bit that she was in this was a joy to watch. My friend Aaron Gum pops in a little cameo. I don't know if you know who Aaron Gum is, but I do. Friend with him, and it was good seeing him. And there was just like a bunch
Cool.
of little, Omaha stuff. Obviously, that's where a lot of it was shot at. And yeah,
Do you
it was
miss
good.
that area? Do you miss Omaha?
I miss the people. I don't miss the place.
Okay.
The Omaha, like Midwest in general, is not fun. Mostly just because the weather sucks. And but one thing I do miss is the roads. Lights are time much better than they are in Colorado Springs. And
Eric
then
mentioned that last week.
it
You
it
mentioned.
doesn't take me an hour and a half to get across town just because I'm constantly stopping at every red light on the way there. But yeah, Omaha's not bad. I think I would go back because of the people rather than the place itself. Mostly because the weather is just horrendous. It's either too hot, too cold, too windy. You got like 2, 3 nice days a year.
So Eric, you can't really
But
it's hard to review the headliner because you are friends with people involved.
yeah,
But people who like what should watch the headliner, just from your opinion. Comedies or something?
definitely comedy. It's got some drama to it, but it doesn't lean too hard on the drama.
Hmm.
It's pretty matter of fact about a lot of the drama. And it kind of takes things in stride.
Hmm.
So it's hard to pinpoint like another movie that's like.
Hmm. Well,
Uh,
that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
but it's definitely funny. Love the characters, and I think probably an Alexander Payne movie. But Alexander Payne goes pretty like when Alexander Payne goes to the drama, he was hard on that, and the headliner doesn't. The
Hmm.
headliner kind of debases the drama through most of it, and it tries to keep things light throughout.
Okay.
So we'll say Alexander Payne adjacent, which makes sense because Alexander Payne's also from Omaha, so maybe that's just like maybe it's what's in the water. Maybe if I
Oh,
did a movie, it'd be just like that. It'd have that same kind of flavor. Who knows?
okay, so that is Eric Holmes's recommendation of the headliner. It again, it's available. I don't know if it's available on a ton of digital platforms, but I'm seeing here, like Eric said, I'm looking on Amazon. You can rent the movie HD for $2.99. If you just want standard definition, it's $2, $1.99. It'll set you back $2. Support
Yep.
Eric's friends. Support the headliner, and it has a nice little poster here thing. It's stand-up comedy. Should be fun. Yeah, I we'll give it a shot, Eric. I'm gonna actually rent it this weekend.
Yeah. I mean, you can review it if you like,
I'm
but
gonna
we already know it's already going to be 4 stars. So
let's see. So I will leave an Amazon link down below on our show notes for you to support the headliner and Eric's friends, and
yeah.
most importantly, support
And
indie film. Support indie
um,
film.
I
And
believe me and Derek will be talking soon
okay,
about this, and he's got another short coming up where he plays the younger brother of Thomas Hayden Church because. I mean, Derek Siltman kind of looks a little bit like he could be related to Thomas Hayden Church,
oh
so
cool.
that's actually perfect casting. But we'll be talking about a little bit of everything.
Oh,
But
very good. I'm looking forward to
yeah,
that.
I,
And
I would say check it out. But again, he's a friend of mine. There's some friends of mine in it, so it didn't seem fair that I should actually review it.
see, it didn't seem
I
fair.
mean, I reviewed it, but like give it a score,
Yeah,
that sort of thing. Because either it sucks and I don't want to do that, or it's great and it seems like I'm being kind to my friends. It's
yeah. Didn't
It's
seem fair.
impossible.
That's something
But I will
Eric
score
Holmes and his
Groupers.
scruples.
Groupers is a perfect 6.9 movie. Anderson made it, and I worked on it.
Eric Holmes has something called scruples, which I still have to look up in the dictionary, so don't worry
Not
about
when it
that.
not when it comes to Groupers.
Not when it comes to groupers.
All bets are off when it comes to Groupers
All
because
right.
that movie is the third greatest movie ever made, next to Gremlins, Gremlins 2.
And just remember, and just remember, if the film vault does end, you can actually follow Hollywood Persona, Middle Class Film Class, Force 5 podcast, and then somewhere along the way, if you appreciate Bruce Purkey and Eric and I just babbling cinematics as well. There's a lot of movie podcasts out there, but my bet is the film vault is here to stay no matter what's going to happen. We will be long and gone, and TFV will still be rocking, in my opinion. Rocking is something an old man like me would say. Eric Holmes, final thoughts before we get to the cinematic.
I've mentioned this, not on this episode, but I mentioned it in the past. There's a movie coming out called Project Hail Mary.
Yes.
The release date is March 20th, 2026. I'm looking at the IMDb page right now, and there is a huge freaking spoiler on there. So I implore you,
Oh, no.
there's an audiobook of Project Hail Mary. Get it? Listen to it before the trailers spoil it.
How PO'd are you about the spoiler that was just released?
It's not a huge spoiler, but I promise you, when you read when you read the book or you listen to the audiobook, it happens kind of early on. Well, it's kind of like Children of the Apocalypse. We could have said the thing, but it's better if you just find that out yourself.
100%.
And with Project Hail Mary, there's a thing, and the movie's going to go on, the story's going to go on after that, but it's such a great reveal. Just listen to the audiobook, get that reveal, and listen to the rest of it, and get excited for the movie to come, because otherwise, I'm looking at the spoiler right now. It's right there on the IMDb page. It will be spoiled by the time trailers come out for this. Do yourself a favor, get Project Hail Mary audiobook and listen to it before it gets spoiled. Because I'm looking at it right now. It's coming, and that there's more to it than that. It's still great. It's still great even with the spoiler. But I cannot stress this enough.
Okay.
And I cannot wait for this movie.
All right, that is another big recommendation from Eric Holmes. And of course, before we get out of here, I was going to say here's Claire, but I still haven't done the audio drop with her, so my bad. Here is
Thank
Bruce.
you for listening to CinemAddicts.
Very good. I love it. Thank you, Claire Miller. Love you. Okay, anyways, here is Bruce Purkey over at the Cinem-Attic.
Hey, welcome to Cinem-Attic, the attic of cinema. I like to think of this as a very, very exclusive club. It's already pretty exclusive to come and check out cinematics in general, but then to go all the way through, listen to Eric and Greg, and then at the other end, hear Claire, or hear Claire say goodbye, basically, and then you stick around and listen to my old grizzled voice. Now that's some dedication. And as a reward, this week, I have 5 screeners for you, all of various levels of interest, but all have something to offer. And I think only one of them is a pure not recommend, and even it's a barely not recommend. So stick around, buckle up. We are going to talk about a few movies here today. I guess I should list what movies we're going to see or talk about, huh? We're going to talk about Wake Up. We're going to talk about Eric Larue. We're going to talk about Hell of a Summer. And there's 2 others. Let me see if I can forget what I'm going to see. Oh, how can I forget? Freaky Tales. And last but not least, Parvulos, Children of the Apocalypse. All right, let's get to it. We got a lot to cover here. All right. First up is Wake Up, directed by RKSS, or I guess I didn't look up what RKSS. It's like a group that does movies. Includes Francois Simard, Anouk Wiesel, and Carl Wiesel. So I must be brothers and siblings, at least, probably. And I was excited about this movie because they are also responsible for a couple movies I quite like. One of them's Turbo Kid. I know it's kind of a lot of nostalgia bait in Turbo Kid, but also I think it had a lot of cool look to it. It had a lot of interesting effects, a lot of practical effects, and I just thought overall it was a pretty neat little indie production with a lot of gore and weirdness. And then Summer of '84, which I really, really liked, which is it gets lumped in as kind of a Stranger Things knockoff, but I think in a lot of ways it had a darkness to it and a real edge to it that Stranger Things doesn't have. And I really liked that little movie, kind of as a kids solving a is there a murderer living next door, kind of Fright Nightish kind of a thing, and it turned out really really cool. So what is Wake Up? Wake Up is first of all, it's a pretty good movie. It's an okay movie with a really great premise. If I was to thumbnail this to somebody, like, well, why would I want to see Wake Up? I'd say, well, do you want to see IKEA the 13th? And they're like, what? What's IKEA the 13th? You know, it's a Friday the 13th in IKEA, kind of. But instead of just sticking with the kids, you kind of go back and forth between the kids and Jason. That's kind of what you get in this movie. So there's a few interesting things about this movie. So basically, these kids are stowaways in this IKEA-like store. I forget what they call it. There's a name for it, but it's House Idea is what it's called. But it's basically IKEA. These kids stow away in there. They have homemade, 3D printed like masks, and you find out really quickly they're basically like eco-terrorists. They're against what these big box, kind of furniture type stores are doing to the environment. That's kind of their goal. So it's kind of like, I guess you wanted to give another thumbnail, you could say it's kind of like how to blow up a pipeline, but where someone goes around and tries to kill a bunch of the guys from how it blows up how to blow up a pipeline, which I think a lot of people ended up hating that movie, even though we liked it quite a bit. So, and Andrew Martin, this might be your movie, man. This might make you very happy. Anyway, a bunch of insufferable, eco-terrorists. They think they're everything, they know what's going on, but they're not supposed to be bad guys, but they're supposed to be shown as kind of I don't know, like they're weekend warriors basically. Anyway, they stow away in this IKEA place overnight. Once it closes down, there's only a couple of security guards there, and the eco-terrorist kids, basically they are going to basically sneak around, and they don't think the security guard guys don't care about them anyway, probably. So they should have free reign and be able to spray paint and damage the place. And basically, when people come in the morning, they're going to see all the awesomeness that these kids left behind. Of course, the kids are filming it to put on social media because that's the way they can get notification of what they've done to the world. That's the kind of the setup. The other half of the setup is you meet the security guards, and the main one, Kevin, played by I'm gonna wrote it down, Turlo Condry. He's been in a few things. He's kind of a standout here. He's a big bear of a guy, just large, you know, big beard, the whole thing. And you find out right out the gate, he's not doing too well in his life. He spends a lot of his time, practicing for those kind of survivalist sort of shows where, you kind of make improvised homemade weapons and traps and all this kind of stuff. Like one of those kind of guys that imagines he's one of those kind of, he could make it out in nature and survive and kill bears and stuff because he looks like a bear. He can kill a bear, you know. In fact, the opening thing is you see him making a little trap that like puts a hammer down that kills a rat, and you can see he's kind of trying out these things. And he's been such a F up in his job that he's just about lost it. And he's been kind of almost punished into doing these night shifts and weekends. And he's, really upset about it. So he's kind of like the guy you could imagine becoming a shooter or something, He's the angry employee that's about ready to snap. So when he gets dropped in his lap, all these snot-nosed eco-terrorist kids, well, things might go wrong. Anyway, one thing leads to another, and he is basically stalking, trying to murder and trap and use improvised weapons on all of these kids, and they're trying to just survive inside of this IKEA overnight. And that's kind of the basic setup. I was down for this concept. I mean, what a basic, fun, simple, not too, it's not too serious. It's not too, high and mighty on itself. This is the kind of thing that if you just wanted that, it kind of give you the same appeal of like a straight ahead action movie, but not be an action movie, more of a straight ahead kind of a slasher movie with a twist. It ended up kind of disappointing me. It just wasn't that gory. It wasn't that creative with the setup that it had and with the people who are making this movie. I expected there to be a lot more weird and creative kills, a lot more, and there was some traps and stuff. It just the all the characters were kind of dumb, and that includes the killer and the kids, which once again is kind of par for a movie like this. I just wanted to be more, and it could have been gory, and I'm weird in that way. I could say it could be fun and it'd be gory, right? It just like the tone wasn't quite over the top enough. It did go there, like people weren't safe. That's the one thing I do appreciate about this movie. There were characters you thought were going to be the main characters and make it all the way through as far as the kids go and stuff. And those things didn't necessarily play out the way that you might in a really generic movie. So there was some prizes there to some degree, but also I somewhat didn't care. I really just wanted it to be a dumb killer movie, and it didn't quite go over the top on those. I'd probably go 3 stars in this movie. It's fun enough, and this might really, really work for some people more than it did me. I guess part of this movie's not going farther for me was partly expectation. I expected more from these filmmakers. I expected more creativity and uniqueness, and it went halfway there. It went there with concept, but not as much with execution. But all that being said, it's an easy, generally fun watch. It just wasn't fun enough for me. I put it that way. It didn't execute as much as it could have, literally and figuratively. It should have executed more. So that's Wake Up. Mild recommend. But don't worry, we got more to come. All right. Next up, Hell of a Summer. So I watched these two in this order and I thought, what the heck? Is this just a week of slasher movies? Because I have another slasher movie here. What is going on? This is a movie directed by Billy Brick, Bryk, Billy Brick and Finn Wolfhard. And you go like, wait, Finn Wolfhard, isn't that Stranger Things kid? You just talked about Stranger Things, didn't you? Yeah, that's the kid from Stranger Things. He also plays a minor role in here, and he directed it or co-directed this movie. I've seen a lot of reviews of this that are kind of middling, and I would agree with them. But a lot of people are saying, but there's a lot of promise here for Finn Wolfhard. I really want to see what he does as a director. I I would have to say I kind of disagree. I don't say it's a badly directed movie, but there's nothing that's struck out to me and said like, oh wow, what a director. It was just like, okay, the camera's in focus and it's going in the right direction. It's showing me things. That seems like kind of the bare minimum of being a director, but whatever. What is Hell of a Summer? This is classic slasher movie. You have a bunch of camp counselors returning to camp. What did I write down the name of the camp here? It's not Camp Crystal Lake, it's Pine Way. And in fact, it opens with two older counselors. So you kind of get the idea that the ones that have led the camp for a long time. They're sitting around a campfire. The one dude's trying to sing a song, and the woman's like stopping him because it's terrible. She doesn't want to hear it again. And eventually, they both get murdered before the credits by a guy in a devil mask or somebody in a devil. Maybe it's a guy, maybe it's not. We don't know. And that's the cold open. And then you can tell it's played for laughs somewhat, but the humor is just like not. It's not especially satirical. It's not especially funny. It's not especially goofy. It's just kind of in the middle. And for me, it was this humor that's not really even trying hard enough in either direction. It's not trying to either be too subtle or too outrageous. So it just kind of fell flat. And that kind of goes for the whole movie. The whole movie, I think, is trying for this humorous, satirical, I guess, parody of slasher movies, but it doesn't really do the parody, boldly or in a strong enough way to really work. Plus, slasher movies are kind of out of vogue, right? You can do a slasher movie parody now. Of course, we've all seen slasher movies, or most of us have, I guess. But the problem is they aren't really in the zeitgeist the way they used to be. Even with art, which, is kind of a nouveau slasher icon, you don't have enough of these old style ones, still hanging around. So what it is basically you have like all the camp counselors returning. They're preparing before the camp. Very, very classic Friday the 13th setup. You've got a few main characters. The main one is Jason. Oh, his name's Jason. Oh, see, get it? And he's played by Fred Hetchinger. And then there's a bunch of them here, right? But he's the main one. The idea is that he's a total schlub, right? He's the camp counselor equivalent of the guy who's still living in his mom's basement. He's the failure to launch guy, right? He's been there for what, 7 years or 8 years, way too long. He's in his mid-20s. The other counselors that have only been there a year or two are like, wait, you're still here? I thought you weren't coming back. You know, some of them can't even remember him, and he's been there for so long, but they don't remember him. So essentially, he gets no respect. No one cares for him. And so you think like, well, maybe the setup here is that he's the killer and he's mad at everybody because he's always runner up for the counselor of the year. He's always, no one cares about him. No one knows who he is. He's kind of the, you know, not the cool guy. He's not the pretty guy, not the good looking guy. He's not the great athlete. He's just Jason. But no, he's just our main character, basically, the main one to watch. But there's a whole variety of characters. There's kind of a love interest for him who is, a young woman who's, I guess, supposed to be kind of less cool or whatever, but she's kind of the every girl. And she got broken up with recently too. So you kind of tell she's interested in him and he's not quite getting it. Played by Abby Quinn. That's Claire. And then there's just a bunch of types, right? There's the gay dude. There's the really hot girl socialite. There's oh gosh, the hot dude, athlete guy, all the kind of people you'd expect. And then that's pretty much it. And then they get killed. And I kept waiting for this movie to have some sort of a twist or some sort of an angle, and it really didn't. It was just kind of a trying to be funny, not very funny comedy version of horror, of slasher movies. And then it was also just a kind of a not very good slasher movie. And I realized a lot of those old slasher movies have a lot less blood than you think. A lot of times they would kind of cut right as the murder came. This movie also does that. There's not really much gore in here. Like compared to the last one, compared to Wake Up, had some decent gore. It kind of went for it a few times. This movie really doesn't. And the gore it has is pretty tame. Oh, and I was thinking of what was it? The movies we saw. It was like that trilogy of movies that was on Netflix about 3 or 4 years ago that we reviewed, Summer of whatever. I think there was three different summers, right? It was like Summer of '84, Summer of whatever. They came out as if they were going to be generic slasher movies, and they actually turned out to be really good and really interesting, and they went hard when they killed people, and they got really gory in ways that you did not expect because they were kind of teen oriented. Movie's kind of the opposite. Like it feels like this movie wants to be like a movie like Bodies, 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 which is like really a Zoomer movie of its time. You either love it or hate it, but it really skewers the kind of the zeitgeist, the moment, the young influencer, rich attitude. And like I said, love it or hate it, it had style and it really went for it. I ended up quite liking that movie, even though I know there's a lot of knock against it being kind of a one-trick pony. This movie doesn't have that, and it feels like it wants to have that. So I can't quite recommend this one. I'm gonna go 2.5 stars. It's okay. This is like if it wouldn't have a little bit of gore and stuff, I'd almost feel like a TV movie. Like it's easy to watch, but it's not much to watch. Okay, now we're starting to get into the interesting movies. So now we're getting into the good ones overall. The next one is Eric Larue. Eric Larue is directed by Michael Shannon. And here we go again. This is kind of a theme this week of people you know for one reason or another, and you're kind of like, whoa, they made a movie. Michael Shannon directed this movie. And this movie does have quite a bit of style. Now, whether you like the style or not is a different story. This is a very non-humorous, well, I take that back a little bit. There's a weird, awkward edge to this movie, but it is very slow and it's very serious subject matter. So this is not going to be for everybody. This is definitely aimed kind of at that art house crowd. Now, good cast too, as you may expect. Michael Shannon's kind of an actor's actor, so he's going to get some pretty decent actors. You have a few main characters here. You have Janice, played by Judy Greer, basically the main character of this movie. Judy Greer's very solid. And Ron, played by Alexander Skarsgård, playing an unusual role for him. Usually he's kind of ripped and doing somewhat actiony physical roles, and this one he's very much the reserved, nerdier sort of a dude, which is really hard for him to pull off. He just kind of hunches and puts glasses on, but you never quite buy it because underneath that he's the Northman. So, but whatever, he does fine. If you didn't know who he was, you'd probably accept it more. But it is what it is. Also in this cast, you've got Steve Callahan, which you probably recognize. If you don't know his name, you'll know his face. Alison Pill, where's she been all these years? We haven't seen her a lot lately. And Nation Sage Henriksen as, or yes, as Eric LaRue, the name. Now, this is a movie where Eric LaRue is the name of the movie, and we don't even see Eric probably until the last act of this movie. It's not a spoiler, it's just the nature of what's going on here. There is kind of a little spoiler that I'll hit you right out of the gate with, and that is because you kind of need to know the setup, and you do find it out very quickly. I think you find it out within the first 10 minutes. And that is Judy and Alexander, or Judy and Ron. Remember, Alexander Skarsgård is Ron, and Janice is Judy. Sorry, Judy Greer plays Janice. So Janice and Ron, let's get this right. Janice and Ron are parents of Eric, and Janice and Ron don't seem to be coping very well, and you're not sure why right at the beginning. She's in the grocery store, and it's these very awkward conversations with a pastor, and you understand really quickly, like, oh, their kid shot and killed some other kids in the community. So basically a school shooter. It doesn't seem like it was a mass shooting, but there was more than two or three. It was like three, I think, that he killed. So it's in a way, in some ways, it's kind of like well, I don't want to spoil another movie for you. There's another movie it's kind of similar to, but different. Anyway, you get to meet the idea immediately that like both these parents are having a tough time coping, and especially Janice, who you're following. She is just getting ready to go back to work after seems like weeks. She has a hard time talking to people, as you might imagine. She almost feels like she's a zombie going through life. And her pastor is starting to try to reconnect with her and really just trying to get her to talk with the other mothers, the mothers of the kids that her kid killed, and to try to work through what's happening for all of them. And on the other side of things, was it Ron? Yes. Ron, her husband, he has joined a new church. Like he's looking for a different emotional support system. And that side of the church is really feeding into him and really trying to, almost like a cult. Like, not that they are a cult, but in the way that they're like love bombing him with like, oh my gosh, it's so important you're here and blah, blah, blah. And really trying to get him to them and trying to get him to make Janice come over and talk with all the mothers in their church. So it becomes this interesting combo platter of how do you cope with the idea that your kid did this heinous crime, and how do you cope with the idea of what is your role in it? Like, did you create this monster? Is this monster just independent of you, and are you taking the blame, and do you deserve to give yourself a break? Or should you be blamed? Or, what is the role of religion in this? And that is there's some really interesting things here. I don't know if I quite have a grasp on it. At the end of it, I know I enjoyed, I don't say enjoy because it's a very dour kind of thing, but I I liked the overall experience. I thought that the acting was definitely great. There were some really, really good scenes. I felt like it should have hit me with a bigger punch. Like I didn't quite get, I don't know, a clear feeling of what the catharsis was. It was a little bit of a muddled message for me. But I had a lot of kind of offline talk with Eric on this, and he definitely, I think, thinks it's much more focused or successful in its role. I think it's kind of successful. He thinks it's, I think, pretty successful. We'll see. I think he thinks it kind of hits with a it comes full circle and really, gets its message towards the end. I think I didn't quite get the message towards the end, but I kind of got the message towards the end. Overall, though, I really appreciated the unorthodox look at a really tough subject in the sense that it really is trying to tackle and battle with the question of what does it mean? What is guilt? What is responsibility in these situations, and who is at fault? There's a lot here also going on with the religion, and that part definitely didn't work for me exactly because it almost felt at times that it was an indictment of organized religion, but if that is an indictment, it wasn't very clear, and I feel like where it kind of dropped the ball was with the dad side of things, with the Ron side of things, because I feel like it was really setting up something there that I felt like never paid off. There's a woman there that seems to obviously kind of have romantic feelings, like she's romantically wanting to quote save Ron, but she also seems to really, kind of like him, but he's a married good man. And that's the Allison Pill character, that was doing that. And I felt like that was leading somewhere, that we were supposed to discover something about either Ron or that other church and like what their true intentions were. I never knew where that was supposed to actually end because it didn't feel like it did end. The other side of the story, the Janice side of the story, I think was much clearer overall, and at least it kind of worked. And once again, I wasn't quite sure where she was at the end of the movie, and maybe she didn't know where she was at the end of the movie, and that might kind of be the point, which is fair. As you can tell, I was a little torn. So I feel like this should be a 5-star movie, but for me, it's only a 3.5-star movie. So it's still a solid recommend because there's quite a bit of good stuff here, with the acting and the story, and it is very interesting throughout. I just feel like it should have hit me. Partly maybe because, and I saw this within 2 weeks of seeing Adolescence, and Adolescence I think covers similar ground, and I think Adolescence is much more visceral and just overall more effective and overall more clear in the multiple ways it attacks the subject, and kind of the way it really tackles the idea of guilt and or not guilt of parents in a situation like that. I mean, they really are tackling the same almost identical subject and issues, but one of them I think is just doing it, and that is Adolescence. One of them is doing it in a much more vibrant and I just compelling way. Whereas this one's much more subdued and much more, like I said, a little bit more muddled. I think it's hard. I have a hard time with this. I'm torn because I think muddled isn't necessarily a terrible way to be with this kind of subject because it is a torn subject, right? Like you should be kind of, oh my gosh, am I guilty? Am I not guilty? Should I be guilty? Should I just let myself have grace? I mean, anyway, I'm going over the same old ground. 3.5 stars, definitely worth a watch. I wouldn't run to the theater to see it, but worth a watch. Okay, to me, next one here. This is the pick of the week. Freaky Tales. Freaky Tales, directed by Ann Boden and Ryan Fleck. They've done quite a few things that you probably know, but the biggest one is they did was it? Oh my gosh, Captain Marvel? Yes. So they've done some big budget movies and some smaller movies too. And this movie, it feels like a movie that's been, and I think if you look at it, it says 2023, but it's finally getting released now. I think it's kind of been shelved. And you can tell that this is one of those movies that had probably some relatively big backing based on some of the people that appear in this movie. And then it has the heart of an indie movie. So I think they didn't really know how to sell it. And it's a hard sell. And I bet you they're just kind of dumping this and thinking like, well, we'll give it a quick theater run and then put it on some DVD or put it on a streaming service and it'll be done with it. And I think that's a disservice to this movie. And I think this movie is a ton of fun. I think it's going to it's kind of made for a cult audience, but it still has this kind of a mainstream appeal that I think could work for people. And it definitely will get painted with the woke brush. And I don't think it would care. I think it would put up 2 middle fingers and say, great, we're woke. You should still enjoy the heck out of this movie. Now, I'm sure it drove some people away with the W word. Oh well, when you hear this sequence, the what this movie is, you should get over yourself. Anyway, this is an anthology named Freaky Tales. You could tell by the name Freaky Tales, it's a bunch of stories. And you're thinking to yourself, if you're thinking like I was, I'm like, oh, it's going to be horror stories or, Black Mirror kind of stuff. And I was very surprised that it has hardly anything that's supernatural about it whatsoever, other than this green glow. There's a green glow that kind of links the stories, which is kind of just a MacGuffin. It's kind of like a magical force that just pops up at some point in each of the stories to kind of tie them together. I kind of thought it was akin to the little silver ball that floats through or whatever in Heavy Metal, or maybe the green glow from Repo Man. Kind of it's there, but it really isn't there. It really doesn't matter. It's just there as a somewhat fantastical force that just exists in the movie universe. That is it. This takes place in 1987 in Oakland, and that is important. And it has the classic 80s style thing where it's like a scroll of information, of exposition at the beginning with a voiceover telling you kind of about the world. It's interesting and fun just to have. It's very much a throwback. And you find out later that the person doing the voiceover is the classic Oakland rapper, Too Short, who has a role in this movie as a character. even though the actual Too Short is played by somebody else in this movie. Too Short also has a cameo as a real person in this movie. You just don't know it's him, but if you know it's him, it is. And his voice is the narrator in this movie. Now, why Oakland? Why 1987? Well, this takes place in a universe, an alternate universe, kind of in the same way in Tarantino, you get alternate universes where, the end of the World War II ends differently than it actually does in reality, or the Manson family has a different end than they actually do in reality. This movie has actual events that did occur in the late 80s in Oakland, but in a different worse version of reality and in a really fun, like, interconnection of these tales. So, and it does another thing. And what I mean by that is so for example, you have real characters like Too Short, a known rapper from Oakland area. You have a real basketball player from the Golden State Warriors, Sleepy Floyd, also plays a role in here. But when you see his story, obviously the reality of what's happened is not what happened in Sleepy Floyd's life. There's no way. And that's just something to kind of know about this universe. I kind of like what is it? Kevin Smith's world. It's kind of his version of the area that he grew up. This is kind of like an ode to 80s Oakland and legends around Oakland, but also just kind of some fake stories. Now, all that being said, I like how the anthology is set up in the first place. Usually in the anthologies movies, there's these distinct stories, 4 or 5 or whatever, and then they have some kind of a tie together, wrap around linking device. This one is a little more like Trick or Treat, where you have 4 stories all taking place at the same time in the same universe, and the characters from the different stories crisscross or flow into other stories. Even though it's not their main story, they will appear in other stories. And that I really like a lot more because it makes it like a whole little mini universe. And you're seeing these different stories, but you find them all interconnecting eventually. And that's a little, like I said, again, like Tarantino-ish as well, like a Pulp Fiction-y kind of thing, where if you kind of think about it, there's 3 or 4 different stories interlinking in Pulp Fiction. Well, this kind of does the same thing for these Oakland tales, freaky tales. Probably wanted to call it Oakland tales, and they probably didn't because people would be like, "Why is that going to sell? Freaky tale sounds better," So whatever. And I haven't said anything about the actual stories. So several different stories here. First of all, no, let's just tell you the basic stories. So the first one, Strength in Numbers. Basic idea is you have a very famous punk club, hardcore punk, underground music club in Oakland, and they have an encounter with Nazi skinheads, and essentially it becomes a battle between punks and Nazis. I can really appreciate that because having been a punk in the 80s and having Nazi skinheads be hated, you look at the famous song by the Dead Kennedys from the Bay Area, which doesn't appear here surprisingly. I bet you they tried, but I bet you they just couldn't get the rights or something. But whatever. Seeing basically a battle between the two is fun. Is it a deep story? No, but you do have a couple of really likable main characters, and you have some pretty Hollywoodized punks. And I was going to be out of this movie almost just because of how Hollywoodized they are. Just the fashion and stuff is kind of very 80s movie punk fashion. But as this movie goes on, I kind of appreciated it because this whole thing is a heightened, not a really, really real world version of those events. So I still ended up thinking it was fun. And the main characters were very, very likable. And there's some animated sequences that went with them that really made them likable. Just it was basically just a young dude and a young woman. And it looks like she's it's just, they're a mixed couple. There's a whole variety of races and stuff in this underground club, which is fitting because they're going to be fighting the Nazis. And even the owner of the club, who have a big thing on the wall saying, no racism, no sexism, no homophobia, no violence, no all these things. And he's like, we have it on the wall. You want me to break that and fight these Nazis? And they're like, but they're Nazis. And he's like, all right, it's worth it. So that kind of shows you how strongly this movie is like, we're against Nazis. That's basically this whole movie. We're against Nazis, and if you think we're woke, too bad. The second story is Don't Fight the Feeling, about these 2 friends, 2 young women, And oh boy, I did write their names down. Entice, played by Normani, and Barbie, played by Dominique Thorne. If there's any unknown actors in this movie, well, not unknown, but relatively unknown actors in this movie that you should circle, which I literally did on my paper here, Normani and Dominique Thorne really are awesome. You could have a whole movie on just their little sequence, and that's kind of the takeaway from this movie too. Like in anthologies, a lot of times there's one really great story and the other ones are like, whatever. These ones, each one of them could have been a movie. Maybe the first one would to me be the weakest in some ways, but they're all, the way they interact makes it so much fun anyway. But this second one with Entice and Barbie, they are kind of picked off the street by Too Short's crew and, you know, told they need to come to this rap battle. And the whole sequence is basically just them wanting to go to this rap battle. And there's not even a reason you think they should be at the rap battle because you haven't seen them rap or anything at this point. They just seem like some young women on the street who have a little bit of attitude because when the Nazis come by, of course, they flip them off too. And you're like thinking, oh, they're going to crash and burn at this rap battle. And I won't tell you what happens, but they basically have to have a rap battle with Too Short. And it's a classic setup. It's executed in an incredibly fun way, and just their characters are so awesome. I mean, they're so great throughout. And I have to say, in their story, there's an awesome moment where they're working at an ice cream shop, and Ben Mendelsohn comes in, and Ben Mendelsohn is a super creepy, like cop dude, and they're two African American women, right? And the way he's hitting on them is just gross and just kind of accentuating once again the Nazi racism aspect of this movie. And it's a fantastic scene. And more on Ben Mendelsohn. He's awesome in this movie too. Okay, third story is Born to Mac. That stars Pedro Pascal, which you see him all over the movie poster. Pedro Pascal is Clint. There is a cameo by a very famous actor. I guess I'll leave it because it's kind of fun if you can discover the cameo. Maybe Greg and Eric have already given away the cameo. It's a really fun cameo as a video store clerk. And I will say there's this moment where the video store clerk says the 5 best underdog movies of all time. And then he gets to number 1 and he isn't able to finish it because Pedro has to run and do something for his story. And it never gets paid off. I thought it was going to pay off after the credits, and it didn't. Never pays off what the number 1 underdog movie of all time is. At the end of this cinematic, I will spoil who I think the number 1 movie is that they never stated. So there you go. Anyway, Pedro Pascal is an enforcer. He's like the strong man. He's kind of like in Rocky. Rocky got his start going out and breaking legs for people, and then he would eventually try to make it as the boxer, famous boxer Rocky. Well, Pedro has a similar thing. He wants to get out of the business of breaking legs, essentially. His pregnant wife is wanting him to become a family man, and he's decided he kind of wants to do that. And his story is kind of that age-old story of, can the guy who's lived this bad life escape it and realize a fulfilling, non-violent, non-crime based life? Or will his chickens come home to roost? Will the seeds that he's sown of violence in his life come back to haunt him? And that's kind of the basis of his story. Once again, it's really good. He's great. And it could have been a whole movie all on itself. And when I got to the end of it, I was kind of dissatisfied because I was like, oh my gosh, it didn't really quite pay off. But the way these stories interconnect allows it to pay off in the final act. And I will just say that. What do you got to say about Pedro? He's awesome in whatever he's in. And the final one is The Legend of Sleepy Floyd. As I mentioned, Sleepy Floyd is a famous Golden State Warrior basketball player. This whole movie takes place around a very, very, very famous event involving Sleepy Floyd, a record that he set that has never been broken to this day. Remember, this takes place in 87. That's pretty incredible that there's something he's never been beaten since then. Even all the great basketball players, Sleepy Floyd holds a record. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You can look it up or you can watch the movie. But this story, if you weren't down, I think, for this movie until now, I think this final story, once again, you do the final story, you make it the most fun. And that they did that here, the most fun. I don't even want to tell you hardly what happens in the story other than to say it takes place on the night of this incredible event for him in real life. And then it imagines what had happened if during that incredible event a tragedy occurred. And then what would Sleepy Floyd do to right that wrong? And I am not going to tell you how it plays out, but it plays out very well. You get Ben Mendelsohn reappearing. He appears, I think, in three of the four. Ben Mendelsohn plays an awesome villain in this movie. He is the de facto, if the Nazi punks, racists, are the main villains of the movie, then Ben Mendelsohn is the specific villain of the movie, and he is just relishing and eating up his role. And then a very, very satisfying, super fun ending. I'm 5 stars in this movie. I talked a lot about this movie. I'm sorry, but it's a 5-star movie for me. I can see some people thinking it's just too lightweight and not really, I don't know, not, heavy enough or not, serious enough or whatever, which I love heavy, serious movies. But this movie is just fun, satisfying. It's a 4 hamburger meal in a 5-star movie. There you go. I think Eric will appreciate that review, whether he agrees with it or not. He'll appreciate the review. 4 hamburger meal in a 5-star movie. Okay, last last but not least, it's not best, but it's good. Parvulos, Children of the Apocalypse. I don't know if I say their name right, right? Parvulos? Parvulos? Parvulos is probably the original name of it. I think it was a Mexican movie directed by Isaac Esban. He's directed a ton of movies. I've seen a few of them too. I've always, the ones I saw of his were pretty interesting stylistically, but I remember them quite capturing me. But then he might have some other great movies that I don't know about. There's so many directors like that. Parvulos is probably the only title in the real world, but you can't put a movie out called Parvulos and have any of, you know, English speaking America probably have any idea what that movie might be. So you have to throw on a Children of the Apocalypse to give you an idea at least. And Children of the Apocalypse is a pretty good name for it, I guess. It's not kind of generic, but it kind of does describe what's going on. And it starts out and we have these, I didn't write down all the actor names, so hopefully Eric and Greg mentioned the actor names. But your main characters are 3 siblings, 3 brothers. You have Benji or Benja, he's the youngest. Ollie is like the middle kid, and then Salvador, who is like he looks to be like 18 or late teens, early 20s, that kind of age. It's kind of hard to know exactly. And at the beginning of the movie, the flavor of this movie is very quickly established. This is kind of a post-apocalyptic world. By the title, you kind of get that, where there seems to have been some kind of an outbreak. You don't know if it's zombies or if it's like just, post-apocalyptic, like, Mad Max or what it is, but they live out in the forest or the hills of Mexico where they have the house. You can tell, barely living. They have things like, they have one record, they have one movie. They can ride a, standing bicycle to power very quickly a little mini generator to like watch a movie or play the record, which, like I said, it's one record. You hear it like 5 times in the movie. That shows the main character taking a bunch of worms out of a box and smashing them up and turning them into like a protein shake. You see them going out hunting. I'm going to say this really quickly because I think it's going to be a trigger for some people. Nothing is safe in this movie. It has an odd tone that's somewhere between dark comedy and just being dark. So right out of the gate, you do have them going out to hunt with a homemade crossbow. The kids are all in their homemade armor, which looks like armor, rejects from a Mad Max movie where they've taken, like, I don't know, football gear and, buckets and other things and made these little like kind of armor suits so they don't get hopefully bitten. And they go out and they hunt down a dog, look at a regular old dog. And you're like, oh my gosh, they're just killing a dog right out of the gate in this movie. And they do, they kill it. And they really kill it and they're going to eat it. So you could be triggered by this movie because there is, every time you think it's going to be kind of a tame version of the apocalypse, it'll do something that's not tame whatsoever and very gory and very in your face. So those moments are here, be warned. But the basic story is brothers surviving and keeping their family unit as intact and keeping the love between each other as intact as possible in this weird post-apocalyptic world. I mean, we've seen versions of this with, how many different stories have we had, The Walking Dead and The Last of Us, all these kind of things where there's been some kind of a virus or an outbreak or a zombie attack or whatever it might be that's led to this kind of world where people are dangerous and everything's dangerous. This is a really good version of it, partly I think because it keeps very focused and it has some very interesting narrative turns that may not work for everybody, but I appreciated how unpredictable and how unusual this movie was. I mean, if you put it down on paper, and I'd be curious to hear if Eric might hate this movie, but if you put it down on paper, you wouldn't write a plot that proceeds the way this does because it almost has like the ingredients for 3 episodes of a series or something because there's several different turns. And some people might say like, well, it's just a mess. But I appreciated that every time it might get you kind of got predictably into a certain sort of kind of a story element, it would turn it on you. I will point out a few things. The movie has kind of got this almost black and white look to it, but it's like just the tiniest tinge of color. And sometimes other colors will be a little brighter, a little like reds and stuff obviously will come out a little bit brighter, but it's almost black and white. And very similar to that Will Smith movie from a few years ago. What was that? Emancipation. I don't know how I remembered that. It's very similar in look to Emancipation, but it's a much lower budget movie. But this movie looks really cool. And there's another aspect is that there is something in the basement. Now, I'm not going to say this movie does not wait till the end to show you what's in the basement. And it's not like it's hard to guess what's in the basement. I would say within the first half hour, you'll kind of get what you think is in the basement. But I will just say that you will get the reveal of what's in the basement, and then it will be dealt with in a very thorough way, what's in the basement. I'm not going to say that, but is there a monster in the basement? Something's in the basement making a lot of noise, and they have it locked up. So that's a huge part of this movie. I really appreciated. There is the inevitable meeting of strangers in this as well. Anytime you have these apocalypse like movies where people are trying to keep away from the dangerous world, eventually a stranger will come into their midst. That played out in a way that I thought was satisfying and very unsuspected. It kind of went one way and I thought, oh, I can see where this is going. Then it wasn't going to go that way. And I was like, okay, I guess it's not going to go that way. And then it went another way and I'm like, oh, I didn't expect it to go that way. So there's some good stuff there. Overall, I was really pleasantly surprised by this movie. Is not a good recommend for most people because, like I said, it does go very hard. It does have very dark moments and it's very uncompromising. I'm going to use the Greg word. It's very uncompromising in that you have 3 young, almost boys, and I will just say somebody is not safe in that group. And it's not a surprise that in any kind of movie like this that people might not be safe. But in a lot of movies or a Hollywood version of this, they'll find a way for all of them to be safe. They're not all safe. I'll just say that. Okay, so what do I say for this movie? What is the rating of this movie? This is, like I said, a hard sell for the average person. If you don't like dark and a little bit violent movies, not for you. If you've seen a bunch of post-apocalyptic zombie-ish sort of movies and you're kind of sick of them, this is a surprisingly good version of one of those movies, and I haven't had one kind of this solid for a while. I'm going to go 4 stars in this movie. I feel like I could go higher. This movie might go higher in my book because I'm on the edge of going higher than 4. You know what? Screw it. 4.5 stars. I'm really curious. I think Greg and Eric both watched this. I'm curious what they think of this movie. I think this is a kind of a hidden gem. 4.5 stars for Parvulos. So really for me this week, the 2 winners, the 2 big movies are Freaky Tales and Parvulos. Parvulos was the biggest surprise to me. Oh, I don't know. Freaky Tales, I had no expectation for that either. But Freaky Tales, that's the movie that I think I could recommend to just about anybody. It's just so much fun. So before I leave, I promised you I would give you the top underdog movie as would be indicated by Freaky Tales, although Freaky Tales never tells us what their underdog movie is. Remember, this takes place in 87, so it's top underdog movies as of 1987. And they list a bunch. I think some of the ones they list are like, they list Rocky. I forget what other ones they list. But like I said, he wasn't able to hear what the top one was. And I'm 99% sure, because he does mention the person I haven't mentioned yet, the iconic actor cameo. He does mention that the top one was Loved by Roger Ebert, and I think he said it was from 1979. And I immediately, before he even said those, I said, like, well, my number one probably from that era would be Breaking Away. And I'm pretty sure Breaking Away is the answer. And Breaking Away has come up several times on this show and this podcast, and we still have never watched it again. I don't think Greg and Eric have watched it, right? I don't think at least Eric has watched it. I love that movie, and I haven't rewatched it for probably 25, 30 years. I think at some point soon we need to watch Breaking Away, because Breaking Away is a fantastic movie and no one ever talks about it. It feels like it should be a classic movie from that era, like so many others. And for some reason, Breaking Away just has kind of sunken into general obscurity, and it deserves to not be there. So, Breaking Away, that's my bonus recommendation for the week. That's all. I think I had a lot this week. Hope you had a great week. We have some more movies next week. I don't even know what they are. Greg finds things. He throws screeners my way. Occasionally I'll suggest something to him, but generally he throws them our way, and then I watch them. And sometimes, like this week, I have a lot of interesting stuff. So hopefully you got some interesting ideas there, and hopefully you have some great movie watching going forward. I'm out. Back to the attic.